Just give me 1 sec as it gets set up. Okay. All right. So we're ready to get started. Let me put the text on the screen again. There we go. So today's our third day of studying Imrei Yaakov on Choshen Mishpat, and we're just in the middle. We just started the last 2 days the introduction of the Machaber, Reb Stern, and we're up to the point where he talks about To'eles Limud Shulchan Aruch Harav, okay, which is on page 6. The benefit of learning the Rav Shulchan Aruch versus learning the original text of the Shulchan Aruch itself. So we just got through talking about the virtue of studying Choshen Mishpat Halacha, the 4th section of Shulchan Aruch, because through it a person can know how to engage in the halachos of Ben Adam Lachavero, which is vital for a person's spiritual development. So he says, we're up to this paragraph, V'hagam de'ein zeh davar kal lilmod kol kirchei Shulchan Aruch Choshen Mishpat bi'iyun. He says, I will grant you, not a very easy thing is it to study all of the in-depth studies of Choshen Mishpat, Loredes la'omek hadvarim, v'lotzeisim halacha berura la'asu keshmai tzaliba de Hilchasa, to be able to delve down into the depth of the text and to be able to extract with clear halachic conclusions that guide you as far as how you're supposed to comport yourself. Ladasa samasa asher yasin, to know what to do. He says, Baharei nitzrach lazeh limud shel shanim bahasmada v'yagia. In order for a person to do this properly, he would need to study for years with diligence and with great effort. V'rabim ha'oskim b'limud halacha u'mehem lomdim muflagim shema'aneh b'fihem sh'adam lo hishlimu atzma b'chelak orach chaim v'yoredeya. He says, think about all of the great Talmidei Chachamim who spend a huge portion of their lives studying Torah, and they profess themselves that they haven't even completed the areas of halacha just in the first 2 sections of Shulchan Aruch, Orach Chaim and Yoredeya. V'chaser lahem habikiyas hanidrashes, and they lack the requisite breadth of knowledge. Ve'ein biyadam hapnai v'ha'efsharut likanes liyam hagadol l'mayim ha'amukim shel limud Choshen Mishpat. And therefore, the excuse that they offer as to why they have not yet studied this area of halacha is because they simply just don't have the bandwidth with all of the other things that they're studying to be able to study this area of halacha. It's just too much. So that's the argument. So what do I say to that argument? He says, "Aval gam ta'ana u'bayazu yesh la tshuva u'pitaron ma'asei neos." He says that argument also has a very simple and elegant answer and solution. He says the solution is very simple. Instead of studying the original text of the Shulchan Aruch from the 16th century, you're much better off studying the text of the Shulchan Aruch Harav on Choshen Mishpat from the 18th century and the 19th century. Uchenira shebeikar avor Talmidei Chachamim elu arach Rabbeinu Hagadol es Shulchano HaTohar b'inyanei Choshen Mishpat ba'ofen mekutzar shelo kedarko ba'orach chaim u'shar mekomos. And I would even go further and say that it is specifically for those people who dedicate so much of their time to studying other areas of halacha that the Rav Shulchan Aruch, Rav Shner Zalman of Liadi, actually wrote this section of halacha in the way that he did, in such a terse and abbreviated manner, which is unlike the way he wrote for the other sections of Shulchan Aruch. Ve'asaf mishasu poskim rishonim ve'achronim mishulchan aruch Choshen Mishpat es halachos hamutzuyos. And essentially, what he did is that he condensed the halacha First by gleaning from all of the Gemara and the poskim, the early and the late poskim, and from the Shulchan Aruch. He pulled together all of the more prevalent and likely to occur halachos. V'chein hosif midilei kama v'kama chidushim v'asa ke'ein kitzer Shulchan Aruch Choshen Mishpat. He also added his own novelle and came to sort of writing like a kitzer Shulchan Aruch, which is, of course, as you know, the 19th century text by Rav Gansfried that so many people have in their homes to study Orach Chaim and Yoredeya halacha. Bekitzer nimratz aval mitu mitzatim bo ikarei hadvarim. So it's very, very abbreviated, but the main things are all in there. To the point where you have a small amount of text containing a very large amount of information. And he organized his words very carefully, very methodically, and very extremely well and thoroughly poured over to make sure that it was purified text. Vehevi bo mikol pri megadim chadashim begam yeshanim lachmo lechem abirim v'yeino yen hareka chasis arimonim dovev siftei yeshenim. So now he's using a flowery prose drawn from Shir Hashirim to explain how he's brought the finest material, both the new and the old, and just using the finest bread and the finest wine and the finest spices and incense, knocking on the doors of knocking on the lips of those who are already passed. And he did a tremendous favor for the vast majority of Talmidei Chachamim who would not normally have access to this to lighten their load. And gave the scholars the opportunity to master this area of halacha without having to spend a huge amount of time. And anyone who has just studied the actual text of the Shulchan Aruch Harav without any further commentary has already acquired a tremendous amount of knowledge, the foundational knowledge that is necessary for every person. Ubifrat im yashlam atzmo im ha'imrei Yaakov, v'kol shekein im chelak halikutim, bevada yekabel yediyah v'hekef nichbad b'mikzoah hagadol hanal. And therefore, certainly, if you learn the Shulchan Aruch Harav with my commentary, both the Imrei Yaakov and the Likutim, as I had mentioned when we first started on Monday, the Imrei Yaakov and the Likutim is like the Mishnah Berurah and the Biur Halacha, respectively, like we find in that commentary. And this whole sefer is structured in that way. Okay, so let us go on to the next point. Now he says, Ma'alat limud inyanei Choshen Mishpat. So going back to the value and the virtue of learning Choshen Mishpat halacha. Kvar amru Chazal, harotza sheyachkim yasok b'dinei mamanis. Our sages have already told us that he who wishes to become wise should engage in the law, in monetary law. And we know this, as I mentioned the other day, that there are many people who have gone to yeshiva. Maybe I didn't mention this outright. There are many people who have gone to yeshiva and they have spent many years in yeshiva, and then they get accepted into Harvard Law School. And the reason is because when you study this area of halacha, it really does expand your mind and gives you a tremendous amount of knowledge, and teaches you how to think properly is really the most important thing. I know a couple of guys who I know personally who went straight from Lakewood to Harvard Law School. And she'ein lecha miktzah b'Torah gadol mehen v'hein k'mayan hanoveya. He says there is no greater, and the reason is because these guys learn Bava Metzia, Bava Kama, Bava Basra. They learn all of the monetary law having to do with tort law, with laws of damages, laws of partnership, laws of real estate in the Talmud, and this helps them go to law school. He says there's no greater subject in the Torah than Dinei Mominis, Ve'ein Kemayan Hanoveya. And it's like a wellspring that is constantly flowing. Game Bechinas Milas Veruchnius Halimud Kedushasa. But he says, I'll go even further. It isn't even just an intellectually beneficial exercise to study this area of halacha, but also it provides a person with spiritual elevation and holiness as well. He says, Ein shum chiluk bein limud shel dinei shor tam umuad ubein sha'ar mikzaos shebetorah kulam shavim l'tova meroa echad nitnu. He says there really is no difference when you think about it, whether a person studies mundane law. What I mean by like sort of mundane stuff, the laws of a goring ox, which is the laws of Bava Kama that you first encounter. What is the status of an ox that has gored either one time or multiple times? Ubein shar mikzos shebetorah. And there's no difference from a spiritual point of view between that subject and perhaps more lofty or mystical subjects. Kulam shavim l'tova meiro echad nitnu. They're all equally good for the soul, all having been given from the same shepherd, from the same Almighty God. V'limudei Hashem hema kemo shekasav hamaharal miPrag. They are all the texts and areas of study that are given to us by Hashem, as the Maharal of Prague points out. Now, what is he referring to? So he points out in the footnote, he says, B'sefer Imrei Noam, Kasav v'zel Lashona. So there's a sefer called Imrei Noam, which quotes the Maharal as follows. He says, Hine Isa b'shem Maharal miPrag, Shahaya lo vikuach im hamechkarim ba'omram. He says he once had a debate with certain philosophers who said to him, Kasher heim oskim tamid b'chakiros hagalgalim uv'mishtarei hashamayim. He says, the philosopher said to him, when we engage in philosophical speculation, what we start thinking about are the celestial spheres and the motions of the heavens. So our minds are filled with very, very lofty and celestial ideas. So therefore, what's going to happen to us when we die? He says, so when we die, at least our minds, which is the thing of a person that remains after he dies, will be filled with thoughts of the stars and the heavens, and these are the most ethereal of the physical objects that exist in the universe. So doesn't that mean that our souls will be filled with the loftiest kinds of thoughts, the most ethereal kinds of thoughts, and therefore that's a great thing. Masha'en kein b'nei Yisrael ha'oskim behilchos u'v'habayos de abaya v'rava ha'medabrim b'inyan shor tamu mu'ud u'chadayma. He says, whereas you Jews, you spend your entire time talking about dialectics and found in the Talmud having to do with what happens if an ox gores another ox. How many times did the goring take place and how much does the owner have to pay for the damages? He says those are such prosaic topics. So you're going to be thinking about oxen and animals goring each other all day. As niskasher hanefesh chalila bebehemos v'chayos haaretz. So he says, so your minds are going to be filled with thoughts of animals roaming around and running around and goring each other. And so what's going to be left of you when you die will be your soul will have attached itself to much more mundane and unimportant topics. So this was the charge that was lodged against the Jews by the Maharal's contemporary philosophers. So what was the Maharal's response? And by the way, this it was a common belief in the medieval period, and there are actually some Jewish thinkers who believed the same thing, that the immortality of the soul is bound with the knowledge base that a person acquires over the course of a lifetime. What is immortality? All of the ideas that you have accumulated in your mind are the things that live on after you die. So the thinking of these philosophers was, if we are constantly thinking about lofty philosophical and celestial concepts, doesn't that mean that our immortal souls will be of a loftier level than the people who just spend their whole day studying mundane halachic disputes and issues of Abai and Rava? So that was the question. So v'heishiv lehem Maharal asher lo kenhu, and the Maharal said, gentlemen, you're making a fundamental mistake. Ki zera Yisrael kedoshim ka'asher hema lomdim elu halachos. He says, because our souls are quite in a lofty, holy place when we are studying these halachos, because az mikashrim machshavatam bishat halimud el mi shehu tziva es halacha. Because when we're thinking about this study, this area of study, we're not just thinking about the ox that gores the other ox, but we're thinking about the being who commanded us with this halacha. The Gazar Omar Bishor Tam Halacha Kach. And it was God who commanded us in the Bible what we're supposed to do when it comes to tort law like this. V'al yedei zeh niskashru hasharas nafsham b'kedusha so yisparach in sof baruchu ki hu hamitzava al hadavar ad kan lashona. And it is through our thoughts of the Ribono Shel Olam while we're studying Torah that our souls attach to the loftiest of the lofty. And therefore, our souls are actually in a higher place than those who engage in philosophical speculation and don't think about the actual creator of heaven and earth. So the Maharal said, we actually have an advantage over you guys because you're studying things in a secular way, and therefore the most immortality that you can obtain is the attaching yourselves to lofty physical concepts. We attach ourselves, no matter what we study in the Torah, even if the most mundane subject that we study in the Torah, we're attaching ourselves to the thoughts of the Ribono Shel Olam, and therefore our souls occupy an even higher place of immortality. Just give me 1 second. My apologies. Okay, it was a big spider I had to take care of. Okay. Anyway, so he writes. He says. Therefore, he just got up. We're back up in the main part of the text. That everything that comes from the Torah comes from God. So it really doesn't matter from that perspective whether you're studying, very, very lofty, large ideas, or whether you're studying very localized ideas about what the halach is when my dog bites your dog, right? And so forth, because that also comes from Hashem. Now, I just want to point out that, yes, while all of that has been said is true, this is a part of a much larger discussion as far as what creates immortality of the soul. We're not going to get into that today. So he says, second line, V'gam dinei hamishpat sheben adam lechavero shemiyusadim al adnei hasvara v'hayigayon. He says, let me go further. He says, all justice, all the laws of the land that are predicated on protecting human beings from each other are built upon even the most fair and righteous laws that protect the rights of every individual within society are predicated upon logic. Mikol makom enam kemishpatei hagoyim shebenuyim hem rak al shikol hadas v'seichel ha'enoshi bilvad. But we have to point out that Choshen Mishpat halacha that comes from the Torah cannot be equated to civil law that is based upon human invention and human logic. Ela mimakom kadosh yahalechunu mishpatei Hashem hema. He says, because Choshen Mishpat halacha comes from a much higher place. It comes from a holy place, and it comes from God. Ki hamishpat le'elokimhu, because God is the arbiter of justice. Okay, and Kamo shekasa bal ha'akeda ushar sfarim, as the Sefer Akedas Yitzchak and other Sfarim write, that even though there may be many similarities to the laws that are contained in the Torah having to do with civil law, they can't really be compared properly to any human law like Hammurabi's Code or even Canadian law in their righteousness. Va'adarabba limud inyane choshen mishpat mukdamim hein batorah. And then Rav Stern writes, now, by the way, let me just give you one example of the difference between Jewish civil law and secular civil law. In Jewish civil law, part of the prohibition contained within Jewish civil law is not to oppress someone verbally, not to speak lashon hara about them, not to insult someone. In the Western world, freedom of speech means that I can say whatever I want about anyone I want with very, very limited limitations. Yes, are there libel and slander laws? Yes, but it's very, very difficult to litigate against someone for slandering you. And not only that, but there are whole cottage industries that are based on lashon hara. The whole media and is based on lashon hara. So there are clear differences between Jewish law and Jewish ideals of behavior in the way that we interact with each other within society. And secular, that's just one example. The whole concept of incarceration for extended periods of time is another area where there's a huge difference between Jewish law and secular law. There's a lot to discuss on that matter. Anyway, so he says, he says, not only that, but studying Choshen Mishpat, if you want to know what the origin points of those laws are, when you open up the Torah, you'll discover that they are the first halachos that were presented to the Jewish people upon their leaving Egypt. The Tur, which is the precursor to the Shulchan Aruch, writes in his introduction to Choshen Mishpat that is actually found in the Torah. The Tchilas bo'enu lemara od lifnei matan Torah nitnu lanu inyanei choku mishpat k'dichsiv sham samlo choku mishpat. In Parshas B'Shalach, before we came to Mount Sinai, God gave us in a place called Mara, he gave us choku mishpat. He gave us selected halachos. And part of those selected halachos have to do with mishpat, which means laws of justice, civil law between man and his fellow man. V'gam b'korvenu lifnei har Sinai lasos lanu aseres hadibros hiktim lanu davar hamishpat u'miyad acharei hapasach b've'ila hamishpatim. He says, and when we came to Mount Sinai, think about all of the primarily in the second half of the tablets, the half of the 10 Commandments are laws having to do with how we treat our fellow human being. Lo tirtzach, lo tignov, you're not allowed to murder, you're not allowed to steal, all of the things that have to do with human interaction. Umiyad achareha pasach beve'ila hamishpatim. And then what's the immediate parsha that comes after Parshas Yisro, which contains the 10 Commandments? While we're there at Mount Sinai, the very next parsha is Parshas Mishpatim, which goes into detail about civil law. Umatzinu shegedolim v'tzadikim nishtabchu shehigiu l'madregasam al yedei limud choshen mishpat. And we also found that great tzadikim were able to arrive at their lofty state through a study of these laws. And therefore, that is why a person has to have a certain level of reverence when he is studying these halachos, and has to approach them with great caution and with a great sense of embarking on something monumental. If you take a look down at footnote number Yadalid, he brings from the Sefer Mo'or Vashemesh over here, he says as follows. From the Sefer Mor Shemesh, which is an early Hasidic commentary on the Torah, he writes, "V'zelu shanu keshalom pilpulei hashas v'halachos u'bifrat dinei mamanis." He says, when a person is studying many of the in-depth dialectics that are contained in the Talmud, especially when it pertains to monetary law, ma'od kasha lilmod be'ema uviyira. It is sometimes very difficult to study those subjects with the proper reverence and awe, which requires a certain amount of humility. He says, Adarabba sheyuchal lavo chalila lidei hispoarus chas v'shalom keshiyachadesh eze chidush b'limudo. He says, if anything, it's to the contrary. A person can find himself coming to a sense of haughtiness, of self-importance when he studies these areas of halacha, because these areas of halacha are so geared towards the scholar honing his craft, honing his mind, that a person who studies these things is constantly thinking about novel ways to interpret the text and to resolve difficulties within the halacha. And this could lead a person, like in the typical Beis Medrash, where you're constantly thinking about writing novel chidushim, novel interpretations to the halacha. This doesn't necessarily bring a person to any sense of closeness to God. If anything, it makes a person feel prideful that he's come up with so many innovative ideas. L'chein tzarich biyoser kodem sheyeshiv lilmod dinei mamonus lasos tshuva v'yizcharet al chata'av. And therefore, before embarking on this study, you have to have the proper attitude and approach. Number one, you have to feel penitent. You have to feel that you're not worthy. You have to feel that you have to have remorse over your past misdeeds. And only then should you embark on this study with a great sense of awe and reverence and trepidation to make sure that you don't make any errors in the study. Okay. Any comments, questions? Nothing today.
Well, Rabbi, I just have a quick question. We're going back to what the Maharal said in terms of the priority one may take in his learning. Would that also sort of shift over to mitzvot? Because, just in terms of how do we know which one is more important than the other?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a slightly different issue, because the Maharal was talking about the immortality of the soul having to be tied up with the intellect. And so the argument was, the loftier the intellectual idea, the loftier your soul will become. With mitzvahs, I guess you could make that argument as well, right? Our sages do tell us in Pirkei Avos, you never know the true value of any given mitzvah, because every individual has to factor in the unique challenge of that particular mitzvah that he stands to perform. So you never know how God measures the qualitative act of a particular mitzvah. So never let any small mitzvah be light in your eyes, is what our sages tell us. So, but that's as far as living virtuously, acting virtuously. It doesn't really speak to the immortality of the soul based on one's collection of intellectual knowledge.
Okay.
But it's a similar idea. You never really know. Okay. I think I'm going to hold it here today because I have to run to Daven and then give the Daf Yomi. So I want to wish you all to have a great day if there's no other questions. And we'll see you, Mirz Hashem, tomorrow. Take care.